Alright, in another episode of What Did People Not Ask For? Um, alright, so I'm basically making this video uh, to have it on the channel more than anything else. I'm sure nobody gives a shit what I think. Um, it's, I guess you could call this a feedback for the devs, except I really don't care about the devs just as much as they care. I care about the devs as much as they care about the video game. And I don't think they don't care about the video game, but I really don't think they care nearly as much as I used to care about the game. So now I think we are very even. I care about the devs as much as they care about the game. Alright, with that out of the way, that's not like, that's not me hating on the game. That's just me putting absolutely honest opinion about it. Okay, so uh, before I actually start talking about DMZ and Call of Duty, which will be hopefully short but separate segment of this video, I wanted to first address why is this video. The background is just Steam says, that I've played 400 hours of the cycle. I don't have any better appropriate images. I really just wanted to put this out, and I thought it will be kind of convenient for me to show you that I have played the game for extended amount of time, so I do know the game enough to be making statements that I'm about to make, right? I want to point out while we are on the subject, I've played 408 hours of this game, plus I have been playing the closed beta, the second closed beta for I think it was 150 hours or something like that. It was definitely above 100 hours. I'm not sure, what, how much exactly. So let's say to round it up, let's say I played around 500 hours of the Cycle Frontier, and here is what I think in contrast to what I think about DMZ. Biggest problem I had with, extraction shooters, my first extraction shooter, the only one that I've played before the Cycle Frontier, was Tarkov, Escape from Tarkov. I'm sure everybody knows that game, which is, you could say, the father of extraction shooters. It was definitely one of the first ones I've ever seen. I'm not sure if the Hunt Showdown came before or after Tarkov, but I'm pretty confident it was after it. I don't know. People can correct me if they want to. I'm sure nobody gives a shit. So basically, my first experience with extraction shooters as is was basically that you have to be listening. You have to, be very patient and listen for every sound effect, for everything, because everything is important. Uh, and second is that everybody camps everywhere all the time, no matter what. You are never safe. People are always looking, around the corner, camping for hours and hours. That was Tarkov. I think Cycle is very, very different in this regard. Even though a lot of people would say, you still have campers, you still have people that will, camp around the corner. I would say definitely 100% there is still that's the element of the game. But I will say this: in the Cycle, I'm pretty sure people camp, one because they are new and they don't know the game, and second because you when you heard a person around a corner, you're not gonna just run around the corner, because then you will be the one getting camped. So it makes sense. So uh, it's not like in Tarkov, I think, where people camp literally an hour on a corner because they are afraid to die. I don't know why that is, or it used to. I didn't play the game for a long time. I'm not sure if the game is still like this. But in Cycle, it feels more like when you lose your loot, it sucks and it feels really shit, but for different reasons than why it feels that way in Tarkov. One of the things about Cycle is that they give you a lot of loot, they give you a lot of gear. You have the season pass is one thing. If you didn't know, if you buy the season pass, you just need to play a bunch of games, a bunch of raids, and you will unlock eventually, among other things, among the cosmetics and everything, you also unlock literally loot boxes full of gear, full of weapons, full of armor. So armor is definitely not as scarce in Cycle as it could be potentially in Tarkov, which is one of the elements because the devs either don't care or they do it on purpose. Uh, they introduce a lot of gear to servers constantly because in extraction shooters, everything, definitely including something like armor and weapons and loot in general, is a currency very similar to physical currency that you can find in your pocket in your wallet. Uh, when the government introduces new new bunch of currency, new bunch of fucking dollars or $2 or stuff like that. If you like when you do that, you have inflation, and that same thing happens in extraction shooters because unless you sell it, which is totally a possible thing to do, people will do it, but very often people won't. And the times that they don't is higher, I think, than people do sell it. So when you sum it up, basically when you introduce through something like battle pass a lot of armor, a lot of weapons, and then you lose it to somebody who, let's say, they don't have the battle pass and they are just like new players trying out. Uh, what Jaeger is doing is they count on the people who are buying into the battle pass, losing the gear, and giving it to the people who didn't buy the battle pass, which makes some sort of like equalized terrain for people who are just getting into the game. Uh, did they fucking intend that to work that way? I don't know. I would say so, but I can't be sure. More important question though is that if that actually ruins the game, because like I said, games like Tarkov don't do that, and the loot is definitely more valuable to everybody, which means that people are more scared to lose it. Which means the game is more, annoying to play because people camp you more. So is it a genius move or not? I don't have exactly an opinion on this, except to say that I do think that it definitely takes a certain, weight off your shoulders thinking about do I want to engage with people or not. So that's one thing, is that I think Cycle is more fun to play as an extraction shooter slash shooter just in general, because you do get more action in games like this compared to games like Tarkov, where not only you go for the extra realism, but on top of that you have that infinite gear fear, because gear is actually very valuable. Okay, so that was me rambling about that. I want to go into a quick segment about what I don't like about Cycle and what I think will probably not change, but it is something that will one day drive me away from the Cycle. And I'm not afraid of it necessarily, but it will suck, I think. That's my like prediction. So here's what I don't like about the Cycle right now. The game was originally designed as a battle royale game, and it is incredibly obvious once you look for the cues, right? Or clues, I guess. So one of the things that you will notice about Cycle, but which I always really liked about it, because it's extraction shooter, and I didn't like Tarkov for the exact same reason, is that there's a lot of very simple things. Very often, when you do need something, you know exactly how it looks like every time. And in Tarkov, I've had a problem with this. Whereas in Cycle, you know exactly what you are picking up the moment you are picking up. You are picking up a blue weapon, rarity is very clear in the Cycle. Uh, and the same way, when you are picking up armor, the rarity of the armor is actually different looking. So if you look for that difference, you will spot it. And you can say, well, Tarkov does the same thing. Well, okay, first of all, you don't really see that on people that much beside the weapons. But second of all, the looting style in Tarkov is incredibly outdated and very dangerous in general. Even in Cycle, looting a corpse is very dangerous, but it's much, much faster you can see things instantly. It pops at you, and that's important. And while I'm saying that it's important, that is important in battle royale games, and this looting system was clearly designed for a battle royale game. And why BRs need this is because BRs are just in general much more fast-paced games, and in games like that, you literally need to drop on a dead body, loot it in under 2 seconds, which is actually doable, definitely in games like this, and then keep shooting people. And definitely, at the end of the game, there's a lot of people in the circle, and this happens. So you can see these remnants of the utility, the mechanics. You can all see this in this game. They have not removed it. Uh, I ponder every day I play the game if that's actually just laziness or if it is intentional, because what they were planning originally is for this game to be Battle Royale, and I have not played the version that was on Epic Games, so it's possible it used to be Battle Royale game at some point. I didn't play that, so I don't know if it actually used to be that game really or not, or just planned, right? But my point is that turning any video game into something it wasn't originally designed for is difficult to pull it off right. And by right, I mean in a way that will serve very well the purpose that you actually want from it. Which means that if you are repurposing a video game that is supposed to be designed for a battle royale gameplay style, if you repurpose a game like that into something that is much, much, much slower paced, it might possibly kinda screw things up. And this does happen in Cycle. It's very obvious when it happens. And my biggest problem, I guess, with how Cycle works is encountering multiple people. Now, this is a conversation that people had since closed beta, and they have been vocal about it. They say it sucks, change it, blah blah blah. Uh, I don't think Jaeger will ever change this in any significant way, and I would assume the only real way they will ever change anything like this is if people will leave the game and they will have to remake the game again. Uh, the problem is that you have a big chance of encountering duos in the game. This wouldn't be big issue actually if the game was PR, which is something that I think Jaeger doesn't think. I think a lot of people don't think this, but if the game was still a battle royale game, having random duos in a solo game wouldn't actually be that big of a problem. And I know that sounds like counterintuitive and wrong, but it's true. The problem with people being in a duo in games like this is that uh, the armor versus weapon problem was never truly solved. It was never obviously addressed by anybody on the dev team, and that means that as a solo player, you are pretty much not welcome in the game when it comes to fights. If you encounter a duo that has any kind of weapon, any kind of armor, and then we are looking like white armor and white weapon. If you encounter a duo like that, you are you are advised to run away, even if you have an exotic armor, exotic weapon. Uh, you can definitely beat them, but that's not the problem here. I'm talking about the fact that you cannot make people in extraction shooters tanks. People will hate the game if you do that, right? Because if you have the best armor and the best weapon and you're unkillable, there is no decision making. And extraction shooters need to give you an edge. They need to give you motivation and fear. That's big reason why people will like extraction shooter is because there's always a danger. And if you remove danger by having the best equipment in the game will stop having any meaning. Which means that Jaeger obviously know this. They decided that armor will stop being functional on a certain level. And that means that any weapon can kill you, which, makes sense. And any armor can protect from any weapon. The only difference, I don't know if they changed this, but it used to be that Kinetic Arbiter was able to one-shot gray armor if you shoot them in the head. I don't know if they changed this or not, but it used to be a thing. That was the only weapon in the video game that allowed an armored person to be one-shot by anything. And you can kind of spot the problem if you think about it, but the real big issue with the cycle is that uh, the armor versus the weapon is a problem that will never go away because I don't think they realize why is that uh, annoying and problematic for how the game works. Alright, so we have the cycle covered. Now let's talk about DMZ and specifically what I think about compared to the cycle. I have big problem with DMZ as an idea. If it was bad idea from Activision or whoever is making this, I wouldn't even consider it. I wouldn't have a problem with it. The reason I have a problem with DMZ at the moment, now it's not released yet, so I don't know much of anything, how it's gonna work, if I'm gonna like it or not. The big problem I have is this. I don't know if Jaeger will be able to sustain themselves and improve the game significantly before it dies. But I do believe that if they manage to do it, they will be supporting the game for long time. I don't know what is a long time for a development company like this, but I will say 5 years, maybe. And that's good enough for me. That's a window I can be comfortable with. I can invest myself in a game that will last at least 5 years, in my opinion, unless obviously the game will start doing things that I dislike, which is already happening, but that's not the point. Whereas when you look at Activision, they've already confirmed that DMZ will be supported for 2 years, and people are overjoyed about this idea, and I cannot help but weep at how people are easily swayed into agreement to something like this. Now, DMZ is supposed to be a free-to-play mode, same as Warzone, which is another big thing, by the way. Uh, from the way I've heard it, I don't know this, I'm assuming this. The way I heard it is that like they are trying to exploit the fact that extraction shooters are gaining a lot of traction and people are really into this mode. The same way Battle Royale games started, gaining a huge traction with games like Fortnite mainly. And Call of Duty did Warzone literally just because a lot of people like the gameplay, the game style, the genre. That's the only reason Warzone exists, because Activision wouldn't not come with something of their own. They do what they do best is copying things. And it's great. They what they copy, they do it well. I'm not saying that it's bad copy, but they are not gonna come up with anything unique. And also there is a reason for me saying all of this is that um, I am afraid that they are doing the same thing that Jaeger did, where they basically were developing a battle royale game. They did the assets for it, and then they decided, hey, we need to switch last second to extraction shooter, which is actually not that easy, that hard to do for from battle royale to extraction shooter. Both of those modes need big maps. You just remove the zone, and you make it that you can come back. You have your own base. That's really the only difference. And I'm thinking here that they are probably going to be doing that exact same thing. And I'm afraid of it because I have played Warzone. There was a point in time when I played Warzone for a bit. I've had to stop because of the insane updates of like 40 gigabytes that I just can't afford to, download every day, because that's gonna take me like 2 days. And so that's like one of those things I'm afraid of, honestly, about DMZ. is the updates, because Activision is just so infamous for the poor optimization of their video games. So that's one thing, but I don't think that's like something to really, worry about now when we don't know much of anything yet. The main worry I have is just that like I've seen how Warzone is being played, and I don't like the idea. I don't like that you need to break armor, because you need to do that in the BR version of this game. You need to break armor. You can switch the armor for a different armor. All these things. Well, people who play Warzone know exactly what I mean. And if you are going to introduce these mechanics into a DMZ game, uh, that will be very, very bad for the gameplay in a way that people don't realize. A lot of streamers, a lot of professional players have no clue why that is gonna be a long-term problem. The only saving grace, if they will do it, is that it's gonna be only bad for 2 years, and then they will probably release a new game and they will have different DMZ, and maybe the game will be a little bit different that time. But yeah, that's like the biggest worry for me when it comes to DMZ. In contrast of the cycle, is that one, the amount of time the two individual companies are going to try to keep up the community and keep up the servers, the game in general, versus how good the mechanics are and the gameplay will actually be. Because when you look at big ass companies like Activision making games like Warzone or just Call of Duty multiplayer in general, you can see, that obviously the money and the experience behind making these games will make for a much better looking game, for a much smoother gameplay, which you can't say about game like The Cycle. And that is something that I, for one, I really wanna see how that looks like. I'm excited to see how I will like that. All the sounds, realistic weapons, all these things I'm excited for. Uh, when you compare to Cycle, I have enjoyed a lot of things about the Cycle, including things I mentioned like visual clarity, which is basically I know exactly what I'm picking up. The rarity of these items is absolutely clear to me, unlike in games like in Tarkov. But I do remember that in Warzone, even the rarity in Warzone was visible. It wasn't as clear as in the cycle, but it was there. So that is one of those things that that gives me hope. Maybe they will actually manage to make this mode, in some sense, more enjoyable for the specific mode. I don't like the precedent that is happening here, because obviously the cycle will probably come up in a lot of meetings for a lot of companies in the future, where they will be saying, well, they used to have battle royale game and they have managed to change it into this mode, and everybody seems to really like this mode. People are playing it, and DMZ or extraction shooters, uh, the nature of these games is that you need to grind, you need to go in, get items, evac. Maybe you won't evac, maybe you will fail a couple of times. That all of that inflates gameplay without the devs really need to do anything, because the gameplay in its own is that people will want your stuff, right? In Battle Royale, they kill you because if you don't kill them, they will kill you and you want to win the game. In extraction shooter, nobody really needs to kill anybody, but if you are aggressive player or not, it's really up to you. And if you are an aggressive player, you will automatically be pushing yourself ahead while you're pushing people behind you, which is a strategy. That's one of them. You don't need to do it, but you can. And that gameplay in itself can take hundreds of hours. As you can see, I've played the cycle for a long time, avoiding players. I've recently started shooting people more because I just wanted to see what I can do with weapons, all that, which is out of fun too. But I think the most fun about extraction shooters is that you don't have to be killing people. You don't have to go in conflict. You can be just doing your thing, and that is enough. You can be playing the game like that, and that's important. The choices are very important if you have them, which in battle royale games you don't. Uh, So yeah, that was a little bit of a tangent about how I feel about that specific thing. But yeah, overall, I am just afraid a little bit that the cycle is, while that game is great and I enjoy playing it, there are flaws that will probably never be, addressed, fixed in any way. For all I know, the devs don't consider it flaws, and I know in my heart, I'm sure that if anybody will fix problems that I consider problems, it will be Jaeger and it won't be Activision. Because if I will find a problem in the DMZ game, I am sure nobody will really care until, lots of people care at the same time. Okay, so this is conceptually the way I see the Cycle Frontier versus DMZ. Should you consider uh, investing your time and your effort into that mode? I think it definitely deserves, let's say, 5 to 10 hours to see how that game really works, if it's for you or not. I know I will try it, not just because it's free, but I'm not paying $70 or $60. I don't know how much is it now. I think it's 70 for a game that basically has the only value in it for the story mode. I wouldn't play the multiplayer player of that game, but I would like to see the story. I would like to play through that, and I know that's not worth $70 because that's the only thing they will ever do. They will not upgrade the story over time. So yeah, for a game that primarily does multiplayer, the standard team deathmatch, and secondary they do this Warzone thing, uh, and after that they also do the DMZ. Uh, you don't have to be genius to see that Activision is not going full throttle into this mode. They're gonna try it out. If people will like it, they will maybe upgrade it later. They will maybe pay more attention to it. If people don't like it, they will just bury it like they always done it. They did it with zombies. They will do it with this if it's not gonna pay, right? Whereas something like the cycle is probably gonna be always around until the game literally stops being played. And I think it's up to you to consider which one of these factors is more important to you. If you rather would play a game that's supported for 2 years or a game that's being developed with less budget, less skilled and experienced people, but for potentially unlimited amount of time. Okay, so thanks for anybody who potentially watched this video. I know it's been way too long, but I did wanted this to be out there, if for nobody else then just for me to have that peace of mind that this exists. So yes, thank you for watching, and if you like the channel, I would like if you at least came back. You don't have to subscribe or anything, but I do stream fairly often, so check the streams out, at least give them likes. That's the only important thing about this channel, is if you sometimes find the streams that I do, you know, go there, give it a like, say hi maybe, that's it. Alright, thanks for listening, see you guys later.